This week on TechRap, Apple unveils new desktop and mobile operating systems, OS X Yosemite, and iOS 8. Samsung announces its first ever smartphone powered by the open source operating system Tizen. And Instagram rolls out an update giving users more control over their photos. Hi, I'm Michael Josh, and this is TechRap, your weekly source for tech news, gadget reviews, app recommendations, and social media tips. This week's biggest headline comes straight from Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, which takes place in San Francisco. During the opening keynote on June 2, Apple unveiled new desktop and mobile operating systems. It's worth noting that, unlike what we've seen before, Apple appears to have imbibed a new vibe, one that is a little less uptight, more open, and more willing to give users the ability to really customize their devices. Apple's next desktop OS will be called Yosemite, featuring a new flat modern look. The new OS promises closer integration between Mac and iOS devices, including the ability to switch between devices easily and take SMS and phone calls from your iPhone or your Mac. Spotlight gets a major update, bringing users the ability to search beyond what's on your desktop. iCloud has also been improved. iCloud Drive will rival services like Google Drive, making it easier to store and share documents on the cloud. Users wanting to get access to the new OS can sign up to be part of the OS X beta program. Just visit apple.com/OSX/preview. Apple's new smartphone and tablet OS, iOS 8, arrives this fall and includes more features previously seen only on Android. Its most notable feature includes the ability for third-party developers to integrate closely with system services. Meanwhile, Samsung also had a big announcement this week, the launch of its first smartphone running the open-source operating system Tizen. The Samsung Z has a 4.8-inch Super AMOLED display. It sports an 8-megapixel main camera and a 2.1-megapixel front-facing camera. The Z is powered by a quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor with 2 GB of RAM, 16 GB of internal storage, expandable to 64 GB. Samsung worked with Intel to develop the Linux-based Tizen platform. It's the same OS running on Samsung's Gear 2 smartwatch. The Samsung Z will go on sale in the third quarter of 2013. We're curious about what kind of apps will run on this new device and how this affects Samsung's relationship with Google. Speaking of Google, this week it finally rolled out Android 4.4.3 KitKat update for the Nexus 5. The update adds a redesigned dialer app as well as improvements to the built-in browser. It also has fixes on Bluetooth functionality. On top of that, there are over 7,000 changes from the previous version. Updates are expected on other Nexus devices soon, but it will take longer if you own a device running a custom version of Android. ASUS takes center stage at this year's edition of Asia's largest technology showcase event, Computex. The Taiwanese-American company launches its 5-mode 3-in-1 laptop, the Transformer Book 5. True to the Transformer line, the main laptop unit has a detachable monitor that can function as a tablet. What's different? It has a detachable Android smartphone placed on the back of the monitor. With the exception of the smartphone, both the laptop and the tablet can run Windows and Android OS seamlessly, giving it a total of 5 modes: a Windows laptop, Windows tablet, Android phone, Android laptop, and Android tablet. The smartphone is powered by Intel's new Android-specific quad-core Moorfield processor. The device runs on Android 4.4 with a Zenfone user interface and LTE support. The tablet-laptop hybrid features a 12.5-inch IPS HD monitor with a next-gen Intel Core processor and 4 GB of RAM. The tablet has 128 GB of flash storage, while the keyboard attachment has 1 TB of storage. If you were to ask us, the new HTC One M8 is without a doubt the most beautiful Android smartphone in the market today. Its unibody aluminum construction is to die for, but if aluminum is not your thing, then you're in luck. This week, the Taiwan-based smartphone manufacturer announced a plastic version of its flagship smartphone, the HTC One E8. Like the M8, the E8 is a 5-inch phone powered by a Snapdragon 801 processor with boom sound and HTC's Sense 6 user interface. But the E8 does not have the ultra-pixel camera. Instead, it sports a 13-megapixel camera, which we think is better. But it does not have the M8's secondary depth camera. Another key difference is the E8's dual SIM capability. The HTC One E8 will come in white, red, blue, and gray, and is expected to be available in selected markets as early as June. Pricing is still unknown. One of the things that makes Instagram great is its simplicity. Easy to use and without too much bells and whistles, Instagram is today one of the most popular photo sharing services. This week, Instagram gets a bit complicated, but in a welcome change that is sure to attract the more pro users. This week, the update rolls out with more controls. Here's a look at all of the new features. For a long time now, even if the goal is to upload an image to Instagram, we've turned to photo editing app ViscoCam for filters. We like ViscoCam's flexibility. Not only can you adjust how much of a filter is applied, you can also edit the photo using a standard set of adjustments. But in a bold move that is aimed at attracting more pro-level photographers, Instagram 6 gives users the ability to do everything I just mentioned. There are no new filters, but when you pick one, tapping on the filter's name a second time brings up a slider that allows you to adjust the amount of filter that is applied. Ticking the square box beside the slider adds a border to the photo. But before you go on a filter picking rampage, edit the photo first. To do this, click on the new wrench icon. This brings up a new set of options where you can straighten the photo, sharpen, and adjust brightness, contrast, warmth, and saturation. There's also a bit of level adjustment too, allowing you to adjust highlights and shadows. The vignette tool is always a great way to darken the edges of a photo to bring the focus to the subject, while tilt shift replaces the blur tool, giving your photos an artificial depth of field. Once you're happy with your masterpiece, click on the check mark and share that photo with the rest of the world. This week, Apple announces its upcoming mobile operating system, iOS 8, calling it huge for developers and massive for users. And while many users say Apple is merely catching up or copying Android, we're more inclined to believe that there's truth in Apple's claims. Check out all the best features of iOS 8 and why we think this update may be one we all look back at as a major milestone in smartphone computing. We've been using iOS 8 for almost a week now and can say for sure that if you're an iPhone or iPad user, you've got loads to be excited about. In many respects, iOS 8 catches up to Android with features like interactive notifications. Now, for example, when a message arrives, you can swipe down on a notification to send a reply without having to load the messaging app itself. This also works with notifications on the lock screen. A quick swipe to the left will let you accept or decline a calendar invite. Like Android, Apple's upcoming mobile OS will be more open. With a feature called extensibility, developers can now integrate third-party apps into system services. Now you can get third-party app widgets on the notification center, share photos and documents to third-party services like Pinterest, and apply photo filters from apps like ViscoCam straight from the default Photos app. For the first time ever, Apple is also allowing third-party keyboards like SwiftKey and Swipe. Speaking of keyboards, the iOS 8 keyboard also gets a major improvement, with a feature called QuickType. Not really an innovation because we've seen predictive typing on Android keyboards for a while now, but it does predict words based on context. So, for example, if you're messaging with your boss, it might suggest more formal words you'd use at the office, but if you're messaging with friends, it might suggest more informal language. Spotlight has also been improved, similar to the update coming in iOS 10 Yosemite. Apple's built-in search tool can now search beyond what's available on your device. That includes Wikipedia entries, directions to a place, movie showtimes,
and apps on the iTunes Store if they aren't already installed on your device. With iOS 8, Apple takes on group messaging apps like WhatsApp and Line with improved group messaging functionality. You can now name threads, mute noisy threads, share your location, and view all the photos exchanged within the group. The new messaging app also adds Snapchat-like functionality, allowing you to send audio, photo, and video messages that self-destruct after a specific time. One feature we particularly like is family sharing. Aside from shared calendars, reminders, and photos across devices, you can now share iTunes-purchased music, movies, books, and apps with the rest of your family. This feature supports up to 6 family members that share the same credit card. If you're a parent, you can also set it so your children need to ask for permission before they buy an app. Following competition from Windows Phone's Cortana, Siri gets a few upgrades, including Shazam integration, so you can identify music that's playing in the background and immediately purchase the track. But the most exciting new feature is being able to summon Siri without having to touch your device. Now, a simple "Hey Siri" will bring up the virtual assistant, similar to what Google Now can do. One caveat though, the iPhone needs to be plugged in. You'll appreciate improvements to some of your default apps. Mail, for example, has been improved with gesture controls for flagging and marking emails as read. Also now, in case you need to look for something in your inbox while composing an email, you can simply swipe the email draft down. Previously, you'd have to abandon the draft entirely. The camera app also adds an exposure compensation slider so you can manually set a photo's exposure. It also adds a new time-lapse mode and a handy self-timer to the mix. The most important improvements will come later after developers have done their part. HealthKit consolidates data acquired by third-party wearables that measure activity, heart rate, weight, blood pressure, and sugar levels. This information is displayed in one place, the new Health app, and can also integrate with other apps. Apple is also working on something called Smart Home Framework, where soon users will be able to ask Siri to have her lock the doors or turn off the lights.
And that was TechRap. For the latest tech news, visit rappler.com/technology. Follow Rappler on social media, join the conversation online, and if you have any tech questions, do send us an email. The email address is techrap@rappler.com. That's all for this week, folks. I'm Michael Josh. Thanks for dropping by.